Yo, what's good? Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Senior here with you. Coming up, Eagles cut candidates. A look at some players who are on the roster bubble going into Saturday's preseason finale against the Minnesota Vikings. And keep in mind that roster cutdown day is on Tuesday. So all 32 teams across the National Football League have to trim those rosters down from 90 to 53. And once we get our hands on that initial Eagles 53-man roster, we'll put that show right here on the channel, Philadelphia Eagles Now. I want to take a look first at our August NFC East sub-battle. We have dominated our NFC East counterparts all throughout this offseason as far as subscribers picked up. The growth of Eagles Now has been incredible. We're approaching 80,000 subscribers. It's my goal to get that silver 100,000 subscriber plaque from YouTube this year. Here in August, since the calendar flipped, we have some work to do. It's been awesome. We've picked up 1,600 subscribers, but we are behind New York Giants now and the Dallas Cowboys report inside the walls at Chat Sports. I want to see the Birds crush the Giants and the Cowboys on the field here in 2024, and I want to get that victory and the bragging rights inside this office. So help me out, hit that subscribe button, and at the end of the day, if you do hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, you'll get daily shows on the Birds to stay in the know with this football team. Eagles cut candidate number 1 is wide receiver Ainias Smith. I want to start here because Ainias Smith, a draft pick for Philadelphia this year. Some people might be surprised by seeing him included on this list, given that he was a 5th-round pick, and oftentimes, ideally, you don't want to see 5th-round rookies get cut. But during the preseason, Ainias Smith has struggled. He has looked and played small and slow. And when he was coming out of Texas A&M, 5'9", 5'10", 4.5 40-yard dash, those measurables and that lack of speed concern me for a smaller player. And where is there a spot for him on this 53-man roster at the wide receiver spot when there are other players ahead of him on the depth chart and he hasn't really done anything to prove that he's worthy of being on this team? I think the more likely path, he gets cut, he passes through waivers, Eagles bring him back as a developmental player on the practice squad. He did have that offseason shin surgery, and maybe he can continue to work back from that. I do want to give credit where credit is due, because after a slow start to training camp, preseason, he missed the spring. Coming off that surgery, he's played better. And on Wednesday, the final day of training camp, made a couple of plays, including a one-handed catch. We know he had that 2-point conversion to give Philadelphia the lead and the win in that second preseason game. Great play design and play call by Kellen Moore. So he has started to play better, but I'm just not sure when you look at this Eagles roster at the wide receiver spot, how Ainias Smith is going to make this squad. Now, there is a question. Do the Eagles have 5 wide receivers on the 53? Do they go with 6? Right now, because they're deep at other positions, I think they might go with 5 on the initial 53. And those 5 for me who make the cut and don't get cut, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Britton Covey, Johnny Wilson, and Paris Campbell. If that's the case, then Smith would be on the outside looking in. The same can be said for wide receiver John Ross. It has been a fun story to follow. When he ran that 4.2 40-yard dash coming out of Washington, he climbed up draft boards. He was selected early in that first round by Cincinnati. Unfortunately for him, his speed has never translated. He's never been able to stay healthy, and his production has never been there. So him making his return to the football field and doing it for his son, it's a great story. He retired, hasn't played in a game since 2021. He got motivated thanks to some wise words from his son that were, very cute, right? It's an awesome story. And he's had his moments throughout training camp. My issue with John Ross is that he's always been hurt. Yes, he might be a speedster running that 4.2. He's obviously not that fast now after all these injuries and him getting a little bit older. But what I've seen in game is that he struggles to separate with that speed. If that is your redeeming quality and you are an absolute burner, I want to see you open a lot. I don't see John Ross open a lot. In that second preseason game, he did contribute as a return man. I thought that was pretty telling as the Eagles wanted to include him there. Unfortunately, then he suffered a concussion. Albert Okwuegbunam is my third cut candidate here for Philadelphia. A surprising move this week by Howie Roseman and company as Philadelphia released C.J. Uzomah. And what that told me is that, of course, Dallas Goedert's going to make this team as one of the top all-around tight ends in the National Football League. Grant Calcaterra has really climbed the depth chart. He is tight end 2. The looming question, who is going to be tight end 3? If we're basing this on how players have performed, it should be E.J. Jenkins. E.J. Jenkins has had a really good training camp. He has flashed at moments in the preseason, does have some familiarity with this organization. He was with Philadelphia's practice squad last year. What a path that he had in college. He went to St. Francis and then South Carolina, then Georgia Tech. He spent time on the practice squads for the Jets, Eagles, Raiders, back on Philadelphia's practice squad. And when you compare him to a player like Albert Okwuegbunam has not produced. He has not been available. He has not flashed. He has not had a good training camp. E.J. Jenkins has, and I think the Eagles may have let go of C.J. Uzomah, knowing that E.J. Jenkins might have a spot on the 53. Another thing to look out for, could the Eagles have Johnny Wilson at tight end? They were very adamant when they drafted him that he would continue to be wide receiver. He's gotten first team wide receiver 3 reps, but something creative that Philadelphia could do. Cut candidate number 4, offensive lineman Matt Hennessy, the Temple University product who, coming out of high school, was actually an Ivy League recruit. And when the Eagles brought him in as a 26-year-old who was a third-round pick back in 2020 by the Atlanta Falcons, they had suffered some losses as far as depth goes along the offensive line. You're thinking that Matt Hennessy might have an opportunity to crack this team. I just don't see it with him. He's struggled when he's been on the field. He's been injured. And him being that third-round pick just hasn't translated, really. I know with Atlanta, he had some decent Pro Football Focus grades, then unfortunately held back because of a couple of different injuries with the Falcons. And when I think about this Eagles offensive line, these are my top offensive linemen to make the team, and there's 11 players on this list. You have your starters, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, and Lane Johnson. And then your backups. Fred Johnson has been worthy of a backup role. Trevor Keegan made it on the Baldy's breakdowns. That's always a good sign. Dylan McMahon was a draftee by Philadelphia late this year. I think the Eagles like his athleticism. You're not going to give up on Tyler Steen yet as a third-round pick from 2 drafts ago. And Darian Kennard has had a pretty good training camp. So that's 10 offensive linemen right there. This is an Eagles roster that's pretty deep at a couple of different positions. You go too deep at all of the positions from my calculations there, and Matt Hennessy, he doesn't make the team. To the defensive side of the ball, Marlon Tuipulotu. There has been a player emerging that makes Marlon expendable, and he could get cut because of that. And I'm talking about Thomas Booker, who Vic Fangio verbally mentioned this week as a player who has really popped, really impressed. And if you've watched either during our watch parties or the actual preseason broadcast deep into the Eagles' first 2 preseason games, you will have seen Thomas Booker make some really impressive plays. So I think he may have beaten out others at that defensive tackle spot, including Tuipulotu and P.J. Mustipher, who did play well last week against New England. I think Moro Ajomo has popped at times. And then, of course, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter, the top 3 defensive tackles in that DT rotation. So Thomas Booker is a name, sneakily, who when the Eagles started off training camp, probably wasn't mentioned by a lot of people as making the 53, but because of a good camp, he might make the 53-man roster. Game Time is our sponsor for our Cut Candidates video, and stay tuned because we have more Cut Candidates to get to. With the Game Time app, It's absolutely incredible. An authorized ticket marketplace of the NFL and Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to kickoff. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. They have these last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, but also concerts, comedy, and theater. I love music and I love comedy, so I use the Game Time app for that as well. If you want to go to Eagles-Vikings in South Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field on Saturday, the final tune-up for the Birds before Week 1 against the Packers in Brazil. Tickets available for that game. One of the cool functions is seeing the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And then you also get the aerial view too, if you want to be particular with where you want to sit, specifically with a certain yard line. If you want to go to a Philadelphia Phillies game, plenty of tickets available at the bank, the best atmosphere in Major League Baseball. So download the app for free, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS. Terms apply, first purchase only, $20 off. More Eagles Cut candidates to get to. And I actually have 3 more. I thought I had 10, but I'm going with 3. Bad job by me. That's why I failed elementary algebra at Temple University. I just literally can't count sometimes, people. I just like talking, as many of you know. Oren Burks at the linebacker spot. Look, he just returned to practice this past week. He had not practiced since the first practice of training camp. And you think about this Eagles off-ball linebacker situation here, Devin White and Zach Bond have gotten a majority of the first-team reps. Nakobe Dean has really played and performed well over the last couple of weeks, whether it be in that joint practice against New England, in the game against New England, or against his own teammates. He's looked healthy, and at moments he's looked like the guy who was the best off-ball linebacker in college football a couple of years ago with the Georgia Bulldogs. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. might have an opportunity to get some snaps a lot earlier than what people had anticipated. His instincts, his feel, really good. And he has special teams ability. So too does Ben Van Sumeren, who made this club last year as a UDFA, and he is a special teams ace. Oren Burks is not really that rotational type of linebacker that you want dropping back in coverage. He's more of that special teams guy. And if you want to go with the special teams linebacker, do you want to invest in the young players with some upside who can become better players at that position, like a Trotter, like a Ben Van Sumeren? I think the Eagles might go in that direction. Cut candidate number 7 is cornerback Eli Ricks. What a great story he was last year. When out of Alabama, he was not drafted. He highlighted our list of Eagles UDFAs who made the team. He played awesome in the preseason, that pick 6 against Baltimore. And in the regular season, he played some good football. But the Eagles, led by Howie Roseman, really restructured this cornerback room and reshuffled the deck chairs, if you will. And there was a complete makeover at the cornerback position. I think the Eagles go with 6 corners on the initial 53. Darius Slay, Isaiah Rodgers, Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Keely Ringo, and Josh Jobe. A lot of people are going to fire back at Josh Jobe. But here's the deal, and this is why he might make the team over Eli Ricks. Josh Jobe is highly respected by his coaches. He might be the best special teams player on this Eagles team. He can contribute on special teams. Eli Ricks can't really contribute on special teams. That might be the deciding factor. Another route for Eli Ricks. Maybe the Eagles trading him for a wide receiver or late round draft compensation. And then lastly, Ty Davis-Price. I think the Eagles, again, because they're deep at other positions, that is a theme of today's show, might go with 3 running backs on the opening 53. And it's going to be Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Gainwell, and Will Shipley. And I really like that running back rotation. I don't think the Birds go with 4 running backs on the 53. So Ty Davis-Price, Lou Nichols, Kendall Milton, probably going to get cut. If you were to look at those players and say, who runs the best? It's Ty Davis-Price. He's the most talented runner among that crop. Who runs the hardest and is better in short yardage situations? It's still probably Ty Davis-Price over Kendall Milton. Who catches the ball the best might be Lou Nichols or Kendall Milton. But this is a numbers game here. And I think the numbers game leads to the Eagles having 3 RBs instead of 4. And because of that, Ty Davis-Price does not make the team. Of note, though, he did sign a futures contract with Philadelphia. He'd be a great practice squad candidate in case an injury did happen at the running back position. 2 more players I want to talk about, and that's why I kind of threw out 10 players a little bit earlier. James Bradberry and Avonte Maddox. Let's talk about Bradberry first. I didn't include him on the corner list. I didn't include him as a cut candidate. Given the salary and given his positional switch to safety that Vic Fangio has applauded, and because Sidney Brown has not been activated yet, and the Eagles are a little bit light as far as depth goes at safety, I think James Bradberry and Avonte Maddox both make the 53-man roster as backup safeties. I know that Bradberry against New England struggled a little bit, didn't set the edge. He struggled in coverage and practice. The results have been solid. For Avonte Maddox, he was playing safety when he had that interception of Jacoby Brissett. So I think the Eagles really like what they've seen from Avonte Maddox, and Avonte Maddox, not a spot for him at slot corner because Quinion Mitchell has beat him out. And Cooper DeJean, I think, is going to be a slot nickel corner on the inside. But for Avonte Maddox, I think he makes this team as a backup safety. So some cut candidates there for the Birds. Which players do you think are in danger of getting cut? Drop me some names or a name down below in the comments section. And as always, thank you so much for supporting us here on Eagles Now.